like the present.
True that.
True that. Well, welcome everybody to Dude, What's the Bid? I think it's episode 9 or episode 10. There's been so many, I can't even count them anymore. Each and every week, we're talking to freight and logistics and rates and just everything else in the world. We're going to be talking about AI today, and not just the broad abstract terms of AI. We've been talking back in the green room before we went live, talking about some specifics of it with Marcus Cooksey over at Duke AI. So it's going to be a great show. My name's Kevin Hill, your co-host as usual with Brush Pass Research, here with Casey Lorcan. The other co-host, I guess there's 2 co-hosts, right? Since it's a co-host with Farelanes. How are you doing today, Casey?
Doing well. Thanks for asking, Kevin. Another wonderful Thursday here in Dallas, Texas. Our local show as well. I guess we're all here, Texas folks. Hook 'em. But I think we're officially, it's a baker's
Let's
dozen.
not do that.
Yeah, I don't know about the down, but definitely horns up.
I'm a Sooner. I can't do it.
Oh, okay.
I got to tell you, Kev, I whooped the Sooners last night in the Red River rivalry. I'm running a Texas dynasty in the new college football 25 game. And
nice.
Your secondary needs some help. That's for sure. Lighting those guys up like a Christmas tree. But, yeah, baker's dozen here. Excited to have Marcus joining us.
Yep.
Met Marcus about a year ago. But, yeah, before we introduce Marcus, if anybody's interested in listening to past episodes, we are available on Spotify. So if you want to go look up, Dude, What's the Bid, and engage with any of this stuff from past shows, please do like and subscribe. Be greatly appreciated. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Marcus Cooksey, co-founder of Duke AI. Met Marcus about a year ago at a conference in Cleveland. But it's been a pleasure getting to know him, working with him over the last year or so. And Kevin, I don't know, have you had the opportunity to meet Marcus before? I'm sure you guys have crossed paths on LinkedIn or whatnot, but
I think on LinkedIn, but I don't think we've sat down and talked ever, have we, Marcus?
No, we haven't. No, I've shared some of your posting. You've been commenting on some of your content. I've found that you're a numbers person, so I find that fascinating. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of numbers, the freight brokerage count comes out today. It's August 1st, and I just got the automated email that I get each month, so I might be able to announce something on the show today if I get a chance to open up and look at it, but we'll see. But it's great meeting you, Marcus.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show. And in fact, now I feel a little nervous with my numbers that I come up with. I may need to pass them over to you before I come out and say this is what it is. If you have the,
you don't want to do that.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me on the show. Been knowing Casey, like you said, for about a year. Loving everything that he's doing when you think about numbers, and giving power and understanding pricing and that dynamics. And I tell you, the answer oftentimes is in the numbers, right? There's the operations, but when we look at life, it's the numbers. AI has run all on numbers. And so it's been fun on this journey at Duke AI. And yeah, so thanks for having me on.
You got it. So let's dive into Duke AI a little bit to start us out, and exactly what you guys are doing over there.
Good. So Duke, the company name, actually is an acronym that stands for Developmental Understanding of Known Examples Using Artificial Intelligence. So that's the methodology on how we train. And Kevin, you and I, we were talking about this in the green room, but we basically take data sets, we pull them through a model, we develop the models, and we train our AI how to interpret that information on that page. And in our case, it's whether it's billing of loads or payments or validation and auditing or bookkeeping, we're training the AI to be able to accurately understand and interpret what's on the page. And so when you think about what you have to build, right, it's a lot of, let's say, back-end tools to train the AI to understand like you would a human. So it's reinforcing learning. It's kind of spanking it when it's wrong, rewarding it when it's correct, right? So it's a very arduous process to do.
And on the usability, going back to our conversation we were having right before we went live, is you guys get it to a point where it's usable, or a user can then take their own experiences, their own expertise, and layer on instructions or prompts. And I have my terminologies all probably incorrect anyway. You can do your prompts to tailor it to your workflow, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big part of it. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about the entire process too. Is like having it to a point where then you can train that model, and anyone can do it. I mean, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that fair?
That's part of what we do. So what we've learned, Kevin and Casey, is sometimes the complexity around what you just stated, training the model, teaching it what needs to do, can be overwhelming to our customers. So let's take freight audit and payments.
Yeah,
especially in this industry, right?
Yeah, in this, you're right, Casey. In this industry, you're right. And so you're dealing with not just skepticism, but unfamiliar with certain topics. Like you mentioned, it took you some time to get acquainted with it and comfortable. But once you got comfortable with it, you were rolling, and you went from 0 to 60 in a very, very short period of time, and you're using it. And we'll talk about it a little later on what the impact of that is for you. But for all of our customers, it's the same way. However, what we noticed though is because of that skepticism, the unfamiliarity with the AI, with technology, what we ended up building, especially around our freight audit, our billing, our invoicing products, is build the whole product itself. So we just abstracted all the complexity and then just provided what I would call an assistant, like a Siri, that would do all the work for you that you just plug in. Now we do I would say for the ambitious, for the ones who are okay with experimental, we've done exactly what you've said. We've released something that's called SLIM, small language inference model, that allows people to create their own custom prompts and do their own, customization around what we have in our AI.
Right. And I think what
that makes sense.
was really very cool to me when I first started talking with Marcus and starting to get a look under the hood of what this thing can do, ties back to my first job in the freight space, or I guess the second job I had was selling memberships to the Blockchain and Transportation Alliance back in 2018, 2019, where everybody and their mom in the space was joining on to see what we could do to develop a data standard so that we could start to digitize these billing documents, these systems in freight, right? Data standards, right, are hard to get everybody to align on. But what Duke does, right, is it's learned how to read all these disparate document formats, right? Everybody's got a different rate sheet. Everybody's got a different BOL or POD. All the invoices look differently. And then additionally, everybody's got different terminology a lot of times for, the same pieces of data that are coming on these documents. So, what Duke has done is kind of, I think, worked its way around the data standard problem and said, we're just going to learn how to read all these documents, and then we can pull the information that we need in whatever instance to, start to have the digitization that we need to hypothetically, build loads faster, invoice customers faster, invoice customers more accurately. And then, I think at the end of the day, right, you can start to collect a little bit more quickly. And, but I guess that's my understanding of it, right? Is doing the hard work to train and see all of those documents and getting that head start on kind of understanding the complexity of how things work in our industry.
There's a warm fuzzy taking over me right now. Perfect description there, Casey. And we're talking about freight and learning AI. Perfect description. What Casey just said is an accurate explanation of what we've done, what we're doing, and meeting customers where they are. We're not telling them you must adapt to this type of format. you need to change your processes in order to fit what we provide. We're saying do everything you do today, put the work. And so I'm representing Duke. I have a co-founder. His name is Vishwana Puntagunta. He's not on the call. But one of the things he told me when we first started, we said the work shouldn't be placed on the customer to change, adapt, to figure things out. He said that's on us. That's the challenge. And so our AI has to overcome and understand what our customers implicitly do as their natural workflow. And it's up to us to figure out how to interpret that, how to extract that from their email, if that's what they're using, website, mobile app, all those types of things. And so it's not just been the AI, it's all of the adaptations and, filling in the blanks of understanding how people operate and use. And so that's what's made it complex.
And how do you
think?
Sorry, go ahead, Kev.
No, I think one of the complexities of, and we all know it on freight audit and billing and invoices, is that everyone seems to have, and it goes back to blockchain too, right? The standardization of data, right? Everyone has their own different format that they've been using. It seems like every accounting system has a different format. Everyone who plugs it into, a Word document or makes it on their own and invoice, they have their own unique, template that they use, which makes it differently, right? Because
it's not interoperable, right?
yeah, there's no standard to it whatsoever. Here's an invoice. Here are the lines. Here's how it's broken down. This is how we invoice somebody. It seems like the same terms, right? They're the same parameters of it, the same amount, the same terms, the same remittance is presented in about a million different ways.
Yeah. And we've seen this, especially around payments, and I'll summarize it as payments and billing in freight. But we've seen this problem way back in 1958 with Bank of America with credit card processing. This problem existed. And when we look at the zip zap machine, the imprint machine, that would basically put an imprint of the credit card, and then someone would manually enter the amount. And then that paper, you say, what happened to that paper after it was imprinted? Well, you would take a box of those over to
Carbon copies.
The bank. The carbon copies, take it to the bank, and then withdraw the money out of the consumer's bank account, transfer the money over into the merchant's account. And it was only then that you realized that person didn't have any money in the bank and there was fraud there. And that would be 3 weeks, 4 weeks later. Guess what? That sounds very familiar, gentlemen, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. It does.
Very familiar. And so what we're trying to do, what we're doing is we're telling people, look, you don't have to, and this is what Bank of America kind of did back then. There were some problems along the way, is because they said, well, here's what we'll do. We'll franchise our technology and we'll let everybody kind of figure out how they can create a network and then do payments. The problem is that it wasn't uniform. And so even though they had a credit card with magnetic strip, the whole communication and verification between, electronic through phone lines to verify the money and amount, that still wasn't standardized. And so that took some years before that became standardized. And so if you look at what we're doing, you see, we're not trying to, let's say, buy, let's say a huge technology and then try to own it ourselves. We're actually trying to create a partnership. So the way that works is that you plug in Duke into your existing system, plug it in, boop, and it just works for you, regardless of who you bank with, regardless of, as Casey said, regardless of who is your factor, who is your broker, who is your shipper. And of course, there's a lot more details on how that works, but it truly is a simple plug-in, and it just works.
It does. And I think it's interesting as well, at least I found it super interesting to start to understand, like, what you mentioned Vish earlier. I know that you guys met at a previous job, but how did you get into freight tech? How did you get into freight initially? I think you started working at Texas Instruments after, dominating some folks in the low paint in college. And Yeah, would love to just, kind of hear how you arrived where you are today and why you're so passionate about solving this problem.
Oh, you want me to go long, way back? Not just, you want me to go way back to UPS.
Yes,
Uh,
let's
you
hear
want me
about
to
the
go
doc.
well, way back to UPS. So I started in logistics and freight and trucking, working at UPS, loading trucks first, and then I worked my way up to becoming a sorter, and sorting, and then I became a manager at UPS. And my whole desire was to become a over the road truck driver, or kind of local, what's called delivery person.
Yeah,
If anyone who knows UPS, that takes years
good job.
complete. It takes a lot of years to do that. Well, I was attending the University of Texas at Arlington and pursuing my computer science engineering degree at the same time. So it was actually a race. It was a race to which one of these things would happen first. And what
Like
ended up
a
happening
degree
is,
or a seat
before you
first.
know, yeah, and before you know it, I finished freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and I was still sorting. And before you know it, I was just a year away from getting my degree. And so I ended up quitting at UPS and took a local job in Arlington my senior year, and got my degree. So that's the early days of trucking. Now, fast forwarded, how did I get back into it? I was working at Texas Instruments. I was doing what they call digital signaling processing. So that's taking analog world. And in this case, I was doing video and audio applications. So you're talking about analog data, digitizing it, cleaning it up, and being able to stream it. So we were doing some of the first streaming videos at that time, and around the TI chipset. And I moved from there because I was curious about AI. And so I began working on a project with Amazon for their Alexa. And they were developing the Alexa agent around our DM3725 chipset at TI. And so I helped architect that whole software and some of the hardware there, and wrote the MP3 player in the first generation of the Amazon Echo. And
Right.
and from there, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just want to make sure everybody's following, right? Ones and zeros, and now we got the audio digitization. You didn't stop there, did you?
I didn't stop there. So I have this thing I'm learning. I learned about myself is that I get bored easy. And so whenever I achieve one thing, I don't like maintaining stuff. I already know once things become successful and you can see the trajectory, is like, okay, it's time to move to the next thing. And so I could see that project going well. And so I moved over to our, what we call self-driving division at TI. And so I was responsible for growing our electronics and software for self-driving cars in China and Taiwan.
That's where the vision piece comes in, right?
Yep.
Dodging pedestrians
Yep.
on the street is probably a lot more like auditing freight billing documents than most people might think.
Yeah, it was actually more complex. And so it's funny, here we are 2024. When I was doing that was back in 2014, when I was working on that, traveling to China. And so I realized at that time, though, I had, so I got back into trucking is because I had this decent portfolio, right? I had stocks, and then I had rental properties and a few things. And someone convinced me, they said, Marcus, you need to expand your portfolio and buy a business, and then sell it to private equity in a few years. And I said, well, I need something passive because I have a full-time job, but I need something that is recession proof, like trucking. And so I started a trucking business from scratch. You remember, I get bored, so I could have went and bought a trucking company, but I built it from scratch, made all the mistakes you can make. I did everything to put that business out of business before I even started in the beginning. Brought the wrong fifth wheel for dry van. Ended up replacing that fifth wheel, only to realize there was no money in dry van at that time, and then needing to get that same fifth wheel put back on because I wanted to do hazard material. So anyway, it was a mess. But that's how I got back into transportation. And so you're probably wondering what the Duke story came in. Well, at some point when you're delivering loads, you want to get paid. And when you have all these operating costs and drivers, you need to get paid immediately. And so I started finding out why I wasn't getting paid, because it would be my drivers. They sometimes wouldn't send over the tickets, the BOLs, and all that type of stuff. And then I realized there was a lady in the back office, or a gentleman, but most of the times it was a lady in the back office who, if she left early, you know, we wouldn't get paid on that Friday, right? So I realized, I was like, this is a problem, and that, as well as the bookkeeping. And so that, in a short story, is kind of the motivation and inspiration behind Duke AI.
It's an awesome story. It's and that's the most important part of any business, trucking being very important because of all the operating costs. Getting paid, getting paid is important, and it's historically it's been a mess in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah,
For sure.
oh yeah. Those were some challenging times. I won't go into detail of what I did to flow cash, but it was. I don't sympathize for any carrier or anyone that has to float cash. It is one of the most humbling experience anyone could go through, managing payments and cash flow. So
And when was that? When did you have the trucking company?
that was from what, 2000, was it 16 until about 2019.
Okay, all right. So you went through the bull times of 2018,
Yeah.
late 2017, early 2018.
Yep.
And then it kind of fell. I mean, and that was kind of a more normal cycle than what we've gone through over the last 2+ years now.
Yeah.
Which the pandemic and post pandemic, which is lasted longer now since than the bull run in 2020, 2021, it seems.
Yeah. 27 months, I think we're coming up on here.
Yeah. So 27 months. We're 27 months into a down cycle. What's the market telling you? What are your customers? People out in the trucking logistics world. What are their challenges with the market as it is, in getting paid? What are they faced? What were the challenges they're trying to overcome?
So what we're seeing now on the carrier side, a lot of factors are doing a better job of making the payments a lot faster. Of course, and so we're seeing the cash flow not being as big of a problem for the carrier. However, that's coming a cost for that. I was talking with one trucking company just this week. They were like, "How do I get out of factoring?" Because what they're recognizing is that they're getting, there's a 6% coming from a broker, there's a 3 to 4 coming from a factor, there's and so they're looking at their P&L statement, and they're like, I've got to figure out ways to remove these costs. So now, while they can get paid a little faster, it's coming at a cost, but that is helping their cash flow a little bit. What we're seeing with a lot of our carrier customers is, it's weird. Many of them are thriving a little bit, but I think that's because it tells you the psychology of anyone who decides to use AI to streamline their bookkeeping, to understand their analytics of their business, to then make proper moves. So while it may not be true of the industry as a whole, I think it represents the type of customers we have. For example, my first driver just bought another Peterbilt, right? He's got two, and he's doing really well. We had another client who started with one truck. Now she's with 7 trucks that she's operating. But I don't think that may be indicative of the industry, but I think it's reflective of the type of business owners who are using a Duke product.
Right, trying to work smarter.
Yeah.
Not necessarily harder.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking, Kevin, with Mark Monero last week, right? I mean, health is certainly a cost. Happy, healthy drivers are more likely to operate profitably than, grumpy and unhealthy ones. So I think, cool solutions like Duke AI that can take the accounting piece off your hands. Like, let's just let the truckers truck, right?
Yeah.
It's tough enough already.
It is. It's it is a lot of the admin work, that the back office work is incredibly. It's more expensive than it should be, or let's say expensive or time consuming, right? Than it should be,
Yeah.
and certainly more stressful.
Yeah. You know how much we spend in trucking, how much I estimated, and of course, Kevin, I'm gonna run my numbers past what you see. But from our estimation, we spend nearly 17 to 20 billion in freight alone on payment processing in various ways.
What's that number again?
20 billion.
20 billion.
So that's between factors, between brokers, the cost that the actual work that is done, all of that. That's how much we spend throughout freight on payment processing.
So 20
Challenge
billion. Yeah.
Challenge me.
Yeah.
It might
No,
be
that sounds about right. That sounds about what it should be. If you're looking at what, are we going to base it on
domestic
trucking revenue estimates, right?
Yes, it's general trucking revenue. So from my estimates, was it a little over 800 billion, 940, I think in 2020, 22 ATA said it was about 940 billion, and trucking in freight period. And it says trucking basically collected 80% of that, right? So that's like 742 billion. And when you look at, 60% of trucking companies factor, and if they don't factor, they have people in-house that's doing the work. They may be, borrowing and having loans to be able to float the capital at 2% interest, and now with interest rates going up. So you're talking about a lot of money that we dedicate towards, that's simply on paying.
Yeah.
Payment.
It is, and it could be worse, or it could be higher than, in a percentage wise, than the 740 billion. Because I'll let you in on this, is that the ATA numbers include both private and commercial trucking, right?
Okay.
So if you look at everybody with private fleets, they've lumped those implied revenues with that. So you're looking on the commercial side about 450 to 500 billion dollars a year.
Wow.
Right. So if you take 20 billion up against that, that's a higher percentage.
Wow.
For the cost. I don't know if you want to disperse the 20 billion over the private fleets as well.
Right. They're probably not.
I probably wouldn't. I'd probably just do the commercial, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. And so when we think about, we've been talking about this market for 27 months consistently. Now we expect a turnaround, but really this has been the norm. It's a norm. So it's necessary for you to work within the parameters of the norm. And I know we certainly have. We have not been exempt as a company from the squeeze and constraints of this market. And so we've had to make adjustments accordingly. And I think anyone has to survive.
You do. You definitely do. It's kind of, we talked about the downturn and everything. It's kind of a resetting back to normal, right? It's a resetting a little bit. It's been the pendulum, it swings higher than it should, and it comes back lower than it should. But we're more in the 2019 timeframe. I think we're getting a firmer setting to get up into that. But we really shouldn't expect. And Dan Verona's on here, and he included me on a comment. We shouldn't really expect the bull market of 2020, late 2020 into 2021, maybe ever again. It's still cyclical. We'll still see some ups and downs, but nothing as extreme as what we ran up and what we've dragged the bottom on for the last couple of years again. So resetting back to normal is important, and building tools for a normal market, somewhat of a balanced market, makes sense.
Yeah, a good point.
So I've always had this question, so I'll ask you, Marcus. Is everyone talks about machine learning and AI? What's the difference?
What's a great analogy of that? I mean, machine learning is you would say it's a division. It's a type of AI. Same thing as like deep learning, right? These are
Mhm.
subcomponents of an overall, you know, AI. You could say subject matter, right? And so in the case of machine learning, and I think it throws people off. They believe that you've got this cell and like a human, and then it builds an arm on its own, and then it learns how to build a nose, a head, and feet and stuff. No, it doesn't work that way. Uh, no, it doesn't work, right? What happens is it's learning. We have to go in. I always try to describe it. When you think of you're trying to. I don't know if you can see my hand. You've got 2 points, right? And you've got 2 points, and in the simplest form, you go from one point to the next point to make a decision on whether or not something is true or false. Okay, so I have a picture of a cat, and I need to go through your algorithm to tell me that yes or no, this is a cat. Well, there are dimensions of a cat, 4 legs, nose, but there are probably
Mhm.
thousands of other animals that match that criteria. So now you need more points, more parameters, more weights, and each one derives you to a different state machine.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and so you create this preset. Now you keep hearing, Chat GPT and Llama with these billion nodes. So imagine you've got these billion node matrices with various combination of weights that derive you to, one outcome of another, right? You're teaching that, and that's preset and programmed. Anything outside of that, it's going to throw an error and doesn't know. So it's highly constrained and bound, highly
Mhm.
complex in how it's trained, but it's teaching a machine. It's the machine learning. That's the machine part of its learning. Now there's other parts with deep learning where there is this where the node is learning and reconfiguring itself
Yeah.
automatically as it learns. But in a self-driving car scenario, we don't want that. We don't want the truck to learn on its own. We don't want it to hit a person and say, "Oops, okay, next time I see that, I know that's bad." No, we want to. So it's
No, we don't. There's real life experiments, do we?
yeah, no real
No.
life. So we want a preset understanding of how to handle certain situations, and that's why it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of people. We hire people to do that, right? So I think you said that, Kevin. It said it's like training a baby, and you need people to help do the training to reinforce it, because certain applications, Chat GP asking it what is, who is the emperor of, France, right, in 1886, right, and he gets it wrong, no one dies. But
Yeah.
what we can't do is that we're doing audit and invoicing, and it incorrectly says something is a certain amount, but it's less or more, right? We're not trying to do those experiments in real time and then let it learn. So there's some amount of human verification validation. But what's interesting, and I'll say this, we've seen our AI going from, and I don't want to give our metrics away, but you're seeing now it's almost touchless without even a human having to verify it, right? And we're
Hmm.
seeing it, and I won't, we'll talk about it, but it's a fascinating, and now see where we were 5 years ago to where we are today.
Yeah. If you ask ChatGPT a question on numbers and they add an extra zero, it doesn't harm anybody, right?
No.
They get the year wrong of that question, but you add in an extra zero in payments and invoicing, and you have a serious issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just an extra zero can orders of magnitude of problems.
Yeah.
So I can see. Okay, so that makes sense to me. It does. It makes sense to me. Um, I guess where does it go from here? Where does certainly where does Duke go from here? But where does what's like the next stage of implementation? What's on the next wave of problems to be solved?
So the next stage is, I think the next stage is education, and then we, I think the problems to be solved becomes natural. And let's go back. I heard a gentleman, well-respected leader in freight, and several of people. There's a lot of skepticism and they say, what? If AI is so good, why you need all those people? Why does it cost so much money? Right? And so that's where the education comes in.
Mhm.
Why does it? It's because in order for me to use any product, and like you said, when you were uh, you know, using the product to send out emails and make calls and so forth, there was a level of comfort, there was a level of
Mhm.
experimentation. And you're not going to use a product. You won't use a self-driving car if you have just a small inkling that you may die, right? And so I need to educate you as the manufacturer of that car, of that vehicle, that you can put it in self-driving mode. And here are the things, here are the parameters, here are the things, and here's the fail-safe. Here are the exceptions that now require you to get involved. Right now, there's education to help people understand what AI can do, especially in freight, and what it can't do, and what are the limitations.
Yeah.
And we see customers on our we on our bookkeeping app, for example. So we have an app that automatically does the bookkeeping, and user doesn't have to categorize anything, connect it to their business bank account. It generates it got a few things wrong, and the people are like, I thought this was AI. Well, and so you have to educate people, what are some of the limitations and what are some of the things you can expect from it. Uh, and then that comfort level goes higher. Now, as in terms of problems to solve, there are numerous problems to solve in freight. We're just focusing on payments. If we can
Yeah.
actually get that 20 billion down, or even if it's more, then you're talking about margins in for carriers. You're talking about increasing the margins, reducing the cost for factors, speeding up payments and confidence for payment shippers to pay. You're compressing a payment cycle to what it looks like today, where if you swipe a credit card now, the money is immediately transferred out of your bank account and into the merchant's account in no time. If I Zelle someone, it happens in real time, and I'm guaranteed that the money's there and I'm going to get paid. So that cycle you will see in freight, and it's going to take collaboration. We are just a small part of that. We want to work with brokers, shippers, heck, even competitors, because I believe that everyone has a specific strength that they offer. And collectively, like we saw with banking, with Bank of America credit card, every credit card transactions, everyone has a strength, and we stack those together. And what you'll see is this one pervasive usage in trucking, which will start with trust, and then a complete whole solution specifically around payments. So the next thing you'll start seeing is everyone's talking about LLMs, large language models. But the problem
Uh-huh.
with large language models, we forget that this stuff costs money. I saw the new NVIDIA Blackwell platform. I think it's got 72 servers in it. It's right at about $3 million. Well, that costs money. And guess who's going to pay for it, right? We don't
Mhm.
all that stuff is abstracted, and we build solutions off of it, but it costs a lot. And so what you're going to see is this derivation from these huge large language models to these more cost-effective models that make sense, that doesn't require these huge servers. That's what we've done with Slim. We've created this, we call it small language inference model, and it's really only fine-tuned for freight. So instead of trying to
Mhm.
answer every question about math and so forth, it is finely tuned for this. So you'll start seeing more of these small language models, and then secondly, you're hearing about Microsoft and Copilot. What AI will be now is more of an agent. It will be an agent within your organization that you'll offload work to. We don't have to be so concerned about jobs. Hear me out, people. You don't have to be concerned with jobs, because as we grow, we have to hire people.
Mhm.
And it's necessary to hire people for quality assurance tests, validations on those self-driving cars. They have billion sensors on there, not a billion, but thousands of sensors on there. They have to be calibrated, and AI is not doing that calibration themselves. So someone has to mount that lidar radar on the top of the truck, calibrate it, make sure it's working, and then when it breaks, right, so our skill sets are going to transfer somewhere else, similar to what we saw in the Industrial Revolution, where we went from horse and carriage and blacksmiths to now working in industrial factories. So when you talk about what's
Yeah.
next, I think at a high level, from jobs, from technology and comfort level, I think that's what we see coming up next.
So I have like 5 questions based on. I'll start with simple because I asked about machine learning versus AI language models. Can you explain language models? You know, whether it's a large language model or a slim language model. What does that mean in the world of AI and world of technology? So I think this is a problem that a lot of people, non-technical people, have is that what's the difference between all of them? You know, it gets confusing in some ways, defining just with definitions.
Yeah. So when you think about a large language model, it's comprised of a of a data set, and you have a model that can interpret that data set, whether it's mathematical operations or whether you ask ChatGPT, you know, to give you information on history, clean up my, let's say, paragraph, my essay, and make it
Okay.
representable, right? You're talking about it's a massive model. You remember it, and going back to what I was talking about with the machine learning, with the nodes being
Uh-huh.
connected. So imagine the more information you want this model to be able to return or understand, the expansive of the parameters of the weights that have to be, and so that comes with a cost. That comes with a lot of money that has to be spent to do that. So only the big boys, the Open AIs, the
Yeah.
Microsoft, Google's ever do that. Well, you think about the cost to do that, and then even the limitation of fine tuning that, right? There's some limitations with using some of these models, for example, a BOL or something like that. And then there's a cost, right? So, there's, for every token you're passing in there, there's a cost associated with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So we got to understand it's not free. So now and then not to mention the computing power to do that and all that type of stuff. But now we can make this very, very small and very narrow focused application. Well, I don't need as an intense of a computing
Mm-hmm.
platform to deliver what I need. It's very streamlined, it's focused, and then I can model that and adapt that, fine tune it for exactly what I need at a lower cost, right? And so that is to me the difference of what we're seeing when we say small language models versus large
Yeah.
language.
Yeah. So you have the broad. You have like the tools that understand the connections, right? And then language models express that to the user, right? They
Yeah.
put it into words and meanings for humans. And is that kind of
Well, no. So I mean, so what you're describing is how the language model works, right? The difference, I guess, what's a great analogy? Uh, think about it. You have a laptop, right, versus a
mhm,
large server, right?
yeah.
Your laptop is focused on just doing one specific target application,
Hmm.
like browse and those types of things. Whereas you may have a server and it's supposed to host different things. It's the difference of the types of applications
Yeah.
that you need, and how you train it and how expansive I would say the parameters and all those things are, right? So our slim model doesn't have, I mean, it's still a lot of parameters, but we don't need as many parameters.
True.
The cost is much less. So it's a narrow focus. Now, what you described is, you know, we see text coming in, speech coming in, but the only thing the computer knows is ones and zeros and numbers. So there's a
Yeah.
whole process of
Translation.
vectorizing that text and representing that in a matrix to then determine the weights of, like, this this pattern closely matches this set of weights given, or this particular set of data to give me this conclusion. And so there's a lot of mathematical parts that are
Yeah.
done to derive
Right.
that, but there's a lot of matrix multiplication, linear algebra, and all that type of stuff that's involved to do that. So yeah, all that math that we said I don't need, it comes into play. I remember taking an analytics geometry course as a freshman, and I didn't know why I had to take it, and now some of it makes sense to me of why we took it. And of course, analytic geometry is how we sent rockets to the moon, and
Hmm.
that. So anyway,
Okay. And then I totally understand the slim language models because every niche, and I love niches, by the way,
yeah,
every niche, and for it being a niche, has its own language, right? Its
hmm
own vocabulary, its own meanings, its own processes. and specifically attacking that. And then there's millions of niches out there, which is great. But taking that larger language model and focusing and training it just on freight is important. And it's tough to train a human to do that. It was tough to train me to do that.
You to say linear algebra. Sorry, not analytic geometry. That was another course. Linear algebra. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean,
it's all Greek to me.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know where this may have.
And another quick question, right? Because Casey brought it up, right? He brought up blockchain.
Yeah.
Do you think in some ways that the standardizations this needed to happen before blockchain, the standardization of data, right? Being able to do that is a precursor for even blockchain to really enter the picture, or am I thinking about this all wrong?
I think
Which I could be, because I'm just kind of making it up as I go.
No, I think you're thinking about it. No, practically, you're thinking about it all right. But in execution and getting people to adopt, that's the problem. So fortunately for computer sciences, there's a standard protocol. The way you transmit bytes over wire or wirelessly is standard. Intel doesn't have their own way. Apple doesn't have it in their own way. It's the standard internet protocol. And that's why stuff just works. Freight, for whatever reason, that just doesn't work, right? I mean, how many people are on EDI? The closest thing to a standardized protocol would be EDI for, in trucking. But how many carriers, how many people use it? I don't know what that number is. I've heard 5 to 8%. It's low.
Yeah.
It's low. And so you have to start back with that fundamental question, why isn't everybody on EDI? And I think when you understand the psychology and what's around that, then that answers your question of, yes, blockchain would be a precursor if everyone came on and created a standardization that's around it. So,
yep, that makes sense.
Maybe that happens. But when you look at what that looks like, and there becomes let me not use that word. I think I'm gonna use the word self-interest.
Yeah.
Self-interest. Everyone looks at their self-interest. And if I'm a small carrier, right, you have to remember our small carriers, they kind of dominate the market, and, smaller brokers is fragmented. Like, what am I going to do to standardize them to get them on the get them to use it, right? Many of them don't even like using mobile apps. In fact, that's the reason why we came up with an email plugin. We were smart. Let's come up with a mobile app, and they can do. Trying to convince them to use the mobile app, right? We were wasting our time. So we ended up saying, but in practice, that would have been great.
Yeah.
But practically, I mean, but in reality, it wasn't something that they were embraced. So.
Sure, and that resonates with me because I hate doing anything on my phone, right? Anything in business, right? Anything where I need to be exact. I mean, I can goof off on the phone.
You're right.
But business-wise, I like laptops. I like computers. I like larger print. I like having an actual keyboard, right? Then I can move across and do things really fast. Where if I'm going into apps and trying to do banking things, and I don't really like doing that.
Yeah.
Because I can't really see it's weird to me, but that's just me, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just not you. As I said, we couldn't get very much adoption. So, so again,
But email plugin. Yes, going back to your point, is that I think that's where the future is going anyway. That, in my estimation, because we all live. I live in my email,
right?
And if I can just do things in my email without moving tabs or screens, that's perfect for me.
Right. And like the question seems like we probably have all of the data being transmitted digitally at one point or another in these transactions, where if we just captured it, right, or started to rethink, what data is important and how to structure it, that world may enable itself sooner rather than later, Kevin, where carriers can be more interoperable. I think it all starts with just like bookkeeping, right? Like keeping your house in order, figuring out where you're running profitably, where you're not running profitably. And I don't know, I kind of envision a world in the future, right, where the good actors in trucking have a record that they can rely on, so that when they're talking with some broker, the broker, you don't have to build up all of that social status again every time you reach a new broker, right? It's like, there's this guy, Jamie Anderson, I've been seeing on LinkedIn this week. He's a truck driver, and like, I love this guy. He's putting out a little cheat sheet trying to show the rest of the truckers how to make $4.50 a mile. Like he kind of continues to seem to be able to do, right? And I think there are little things that folks can do to make their lives a little bit easier. So it's a fun time to be in space.
Yeah, it goes back to doing the analytics. I want to say doing your own analytics, right? Knowing your numbers if you're in business is something that we should all be very aware of, but no one likes to go in and do the hard work. And that's where if you had whether it's AI or whatever, right, that will do it for you and keep track of it, and you can put all that together, that is powerful. Is powerful. But it's one of the things that we find in all businesses and all industries. People really don't know their numbers all that well.
No.
If you don't know your numbers, it doesn't matter what you do. You don't know your numbers.
You're working for free. I always say, air leaks in your tractor tires is dangerous, and air leaks in your profit is dangerous, right? You can't steer your tractor very well. You can't be responsive. It leads to blowouts. The same thing happens in a trucking business. You can't respond to preventative maintenance, right? You're working extra hard just trying to keep up with your expenses. You don't know where your money is going. You just know you're not making enough. And sometimes it's looking at those numbers, and it's hard to do because it's like looking in the mirror. Your numbers will tell the story about your business. And we have a series that's going to be coming up where we're going to do forensics of a failed trucking business. We're going to go and open up their P&L and post-mortem, we're going to look at what was going on, the trends that were happening, right? And we have to do that. In my company, there have been times where you look at something and you have to make some very, 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 very tough decisions. It's hard. Yep,
it is. I will definitely watch that because that is just super interesting to everyone, especially to me. Is the postmortems on where the cash goes. Because oftentimes you have so many bills, so many expenses.
Yeah,
keeping it all on track and keeping the trucks on the road where they're supposed to be is an enormous task.
Yeah. Stay tuned. We'll be featuring it on our Instagram channel and maybe share some of it on LinkedIn. So it should be kind of humorous at the same time educational.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's been enjoyable having you. You guys can continue. I got a wrap. I got a call coming up here. Here we're at 11 o'clock Central Time. Whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah, it's up. Yeah, I mean, unless you've asked all the questions, man, this has been a privilege. It's been fun. I've enjoyed this.
Same here.
This is really good.
Let's do this again soon.
Have to do it soon. Yeah. So thanks Kevin. Thanks Casey for having me on.
Yeah. And to reach out to you markets, right? Our audience, right? How do they reach out and find you, learn more about Duke and what you guys are doing?
Oh yeah, you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, Marcus Cooksey. Come visit our website. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on our company channel on LinkedIn. Send me an email if you're curious. If you want to just learn some stuff, I love talking about this stuff. I've got some brilliant guys on my team, and we're always looking to brainstorm and partner. So send me an email, Marcus@duke.ai, and use Slim. If you're interested in building your own application, we encourage that too. You can leverage our AI to get started really quick. So Marcus at Duke.ai, reach out to me, okay?
Yes.
Will do. I will reach out to you because I do have a couple questions that that I'd like to ask. So
All right.
definitely
Absolutely.
do that. And with that, I am going to leave the stage and let you guys wrap up the show.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
See
Thanks,
you,
Kev.
Kev.
You bet.
No. Yeah, Marcus. Thank you for joining. I don't know. I was showing a little bit of Slim earlier, digitizing, kind of extracting data from I think it was a BOL or a POD. But I really encourage everybody who's listening to go out, play with that tool, see what you can pull from these documents. I think it really can enable a world where you can start to derive a lot more from the data that you do have in your systems and start to take a lot of kind of the BS off of your team members' plates, whether that's auditing or load building or just data entry, right? Like, I think Duke is something that can help folks work smarter, not harder, keep the truckers trucking, and keep the brokers focused on getting freight from their customers and providing service. So, yeah, Marcus, really appreciate you coming on and talking with us.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you, Casey. Appreciate it.
Yeah. We'll have you back soon. But happy Thursday, everybody, and catch you guys next week.
All right. Cool. Take care.